and yeah, just share insight and have an exchange that could impact our lives, for the better. Um, I guess a little bit about me. I am a full spectrum. I consider myself a full spectrum doula, meaning that I aim to target all aspects of birth. So not just pregnancy and being present at a birth, wanting to support folks who, encounter pregnancy and infant loss or even bereavement, working with folks that are from the LGBTQ plus community, so on and so forth, working with other communities that are also marginalized. Um, I have been doing this since July of 2020. I did it out of the experiences that I had in my two previous pregnancies. And obviously, I'm a parent, so I have a 5-year old where I experienced traumatic birth. I've experienced, not necessarily having a voice and not really knowing that I could advocate for myself. And then I have a 1-year old who, out of that experience and having postpartum depression for a second time, I made the decision to not only fight for myself but create a free birthing space for other folks. And I am currently pregnant. I am almost 5 months pregnant, and this time around, I am a doula, and I also have a birth worker that is going to be supporting me. So it's truly come full circle. I am an artist, as Miracle said before. Um, I have been drawing since I was a kid. And I've been wondering how I could infuse that into the work that I choose to do in life. And I figured that encapsulating the Black experience in all factions, not just birth, I want to pursue creating more prints like that. And yeah, I'm a former labor union organizer. So before I even became a birth worker, which I see where the trajectory was going, I was fighting for workers' rights and talking about how slavery is interconnected in the workspace. And so, not even realizing that I'm now a birth worker talking about how slavery is really the source of all healthcare, the source of all things that we experience here. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. Um, but yeah, that's it.
Well, congratulations on your baby. That's so beautiful to hear. I hope that you have a healthy delivery. I'm not sure if you are comfortable sharing that information, but are you going to deliver like privately at home, or are you going to deliver in the hospital?
That's a great question. So, my initial thoughts right now is that I want to have a home birth. I would prefer something that is unassisted, but I understand that things are there's a scope of what is safe and what's not in our society. So I have already developed like a backup plan of going through with the midwives that I had with my second child. Although that is a hospital space still. Um, I do either want to invest in having a midwife, and they come and have a home birth in my home, or having, as free of a birth experience in a medical institutionalized space as possible.
Hmm. Wow, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So in honor of Black History Month, we wanted to share a little bit about a phenomenal woman. Dr. Helen Octavia Dickens was the first African American OB-GYN in the US. We thought that it would be important for us to share this information just in light of Black History Month and because it surrounds the topic that we're kind of talking about today as far as maternal health. So I'll let Brittany take it away and share a little bit of info about Dr. Dickens.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Brittany, the sponsorship chair. Like Miracle just said, we're just going to briefly talk about Dr. Helen Octavia Dickens. She attended the University of Illinois College of Medicine and was the first African American woman to be admitted in the American College of Surgeons. And she completed her residency at Provident, a Black hospital on the south side of Chicago, and treated tuberculosis among the poor populations. In 1948, Dr. Dickens became the director of the Mercy Douglas Hospital Department of OBGYN, and was the first African American woman fellow in the American College of Surgeons. Um, she also led extensive research in teen pregnancy and sexual health issues, as well as teaching health professionals intervention strategies to lower the incidence of teen pregnancy and STDs. Lastly, Dr. Helen Octavia Dickens is a trailblazer in medicine and has paved the way for African Americans pursuing medicine as well, specifically OBGYN specialty. And we're very grateful for her influence.
So thank you for sharing that, Brittany. All the information that you shared is amazing. I think that Dr. Dickens is a trailblazer, and she's amazing as far as just setting the pathway and being a role model to being in a field that, for one, is already marginalized. And we'll talk about this in our next slide, but I think it's really important that you brought up, Stephanie, how engraved slavery is in gynecology. And I wanted to bring that up before we move on, because we're going to talk about why alternative medicine and holistic health is important and why so many people turn to that. Because we, as African Americans, especially African American women, have so much fear and distrust in medicine and healthcare because of the history of where obstetrics and gynecology came from, which is inevitably slavery. um, let's just go on to the next slide, because it talks a little bit about the disparity and why people have distrust in medicine. So I'll let Chiedu take it away as far as addressing the disparity and the facts.
Hi guys, I'm Chiedu. I'm the events chair, and so here we're just talking about disparity. Brown women, particularly African American women, suffer the worst pregnancy complications than any other ethnic group in the U.S. And we saw I know this issue kind of came to light, especially kind of towards the middle of the pandemic. Especially largely during the Black Lives Matters movement. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Chronic stresses, however, have been more robust predictors of birth weight. For example, unemployment and crowding predicted 2.0 to 3.8 times the risk of LBW among low-income women in one study. And the last point is in the more than 200 countries of African American mothers that ProPublica and NPR have collected over the past year, the feeling of being devalued and disrespected by medical workers was a constant theme, which is something that we really shouldn't have to face.
Yeah, that's very true. I think a really important point that we brought up is the idea of chronic stress or toxic stress when a woman is pregnant. And Stephanie, I'm not sure if you deal with that any type of way, and I'll let you go ahead and explain what you do as a doula, but just the idea of a woman, especially a Black woman, enduring so much stress and so many external factors when she's pregnant, and things that one should not even have to worry about when you're carrying a child, and the impact that that puts on the mother and the baby, and in terms of delivery. So I think that's really important because, so many people and so many new mental health research articles are coming out, and they are talking about the impact of toxic stress in African American women. So there are a lot of really important points that were brought up on this slide, but I want to allow Stephanie to just dive deeper into some of these topics and just tell us what she does as a full spectrum birth worker. So I guess the first question we'll just chat around is, what do doulas do? And what is a doula essentially?
Okay. So, what I've noticed throughout the time of me doing work as a doula, I will come across people that know what doulas are, and then a great majority of people that don't really know, or they only associate us with one or two organizations, and that's it. And so, doula, just to even back it up and break it down, the Greek term for doula refers to woman servant. And so, a lot of times you can even suggest that that means slave. And so I want to put it into context and how we address people, because yes, we do serve and we do contribute to our community, but that is a key reason why I choose to address myself as a birth worker, because I don't want to um, speak on things or refer to myself in a certain way, not even knowing what the meaning really is. So first and foremost, I consider a doula to be someone that focuses on the holistic health of whoever the birthing person is. And I refer to women, men, whoever that is pregnant as a birthing person, just so that I'm not, excluding anyone. But that's how I tend to refer to people. But as far as the Black birthing experience, a doula is someone that provides care for the whole person. And so we provide for the physical, the mental, the spiritual, the social, and intellectual needs of that person, because these aspects affect your overall health. So being unwell in one area will affect all the other areas. And so we provide education and support ranging from preconception, pregnancy and infant loss, birth, high risk care, postpartum, even separate from from birth and bringing life into the world. We also have doulas that focus on death and people that want to live their most authentic life as they get closer to their final days. So there's a full range of folks out here that truly do this work, and I think it's just as informational for someone that isn't a parent. So maternal health and wellness has been on the decline, and only certain aspects are focused on in standard healthcare. And as you will see, or as I will continue to describe further, um, we honestly are the reasons, or Black doulas specifically, Black and brown doulas are the forefront of the reasons why we don't lose moms currently, because without us, we're not, we don't have that advocacy there. So we definitely play that role as far as educating the person so that they can know what they want, and they can speak for themselves, as well as having whoever they choose as their support person or support team to back them up in whatever choice they make wherever they choose to birth.
That is amazing. I love the fact that you brought up holistic health, because a lot of the people on the call, we want to go into healthcare, we want to be doctors and nurses and things like that. But one aspect that we always talk about in medicine is the idea of looking at people and patients holistically. Because if you are a healthcare provider and you are only treating the disease, or you are only delivering the baby, if you are not holistically thinking about the factors that this family has to deal with once they leave the hospital, are you really doing your job? Are you really ensuring that this family and this mother and this baby will be able to live happy, fulfilling lives when they leave, if you're not taking into consideration all of the things mentally, emotionally, economically that these people will have to deal with once you deliver this child? So I love that aspect about birth workers, because all of those things are just as important as the medical or science factor of delivering a baby. Um, so the next question is, what is the difference between a doula and a midwife? I think a lot of people look at them as the same thing, but they're not. And I'm sorry that we have this slide as a doula or address you as a doula, because as you said, you don't consider yourself that, or you don't call yourself that. So I guess the question is, what is the difference between a full spectrum birth worker and a midwife?
And so that's the thing too, because I would want to specify, what midwife are we looking at? Are we looking at one that, is working within the hospital, someone that follows, hospital policy and whatnot? But as far as doulas, which I understand that is a mainstream term, so I'm cool referring to it, but I always want to make sure that whenever I enter spaces, I, educate folks so that way, they have a choice to choose to call me, or call someone a birth worker or a doula, or, there's so many different phrases that we've transformed now. Like birth keeper, so many different powerful words, and, changing the trajectory of what is intended. And so a doula, so I know from myself, I do see clients. We do like the intake form. We assess things as far as like what their pregnancy journey, what they would like it to be, what their goals may be. Have they had any education? Is this their education regarding childbirth? Is this their first child? Is it their third or fourth? Diving into their lifestyle, their relationships, whether that be with the significant other, with family, or whoever they're choosing to be in their support circle. And it's honestly a journey throughout the first 9 months, but hoping that they get to you soon enough, um, and not, a few weeks before due date, and, you're hoping that they trust you. But you're essentially educating them throughout the time that they're pregnant, and creating a birth plan, and, ensuring that they're fully educated. And for myself, which I believe is a new wave, is talking about advocacy, because there is a lot of debate on what advocacy means, and certain hospitals not being comfortable with advocacy, and things just going, how they normally carry about in their day-to-day policies. And so we talk about that, as well as pain management, breastfeeding, um, all types of support that they may need throughout the entire journey. And even on the spiritual, or the emotional, and mental side, doing things that target self-care, journaling, doing different activities that bring that birthing person closer to the birth they envision, the things that they aspire to have for their child, honoring their transition from being maybe a parent of one to a parent of two, or, to being a complete, single individual, and becoming a parent for the very first time. So we do a lot of that. And when I say what type of midwife are we talking about, I bring up the fact that a midwife provides medical support. So no, a doula, I mean, doesn't catch the baby. There have been situations, where if it comes to that or something, then yeah, they may be present, but we're not medical staff, and we don't do any of the, checking blood pressure, vital signs, all those things. A midwife does that, and they help deliver the baby, of course. They can still provide education, just like an OB, and answer questions, and can similarly work in the same way as far as giving resources to their patient. But in most cases, especially in Texas, um, midwives that are hospital based or work within an institution can many times be similar to having an OB. And so what that means is that the care is limited because of whatever the hospital policy is. So, for example, if I wanted to have a lotus birth means that my child will be born with their placenta attached to them, and it will fall off naturally in 7 to 10 days. A lot of hospitals don't recognize that, and they will come up with their own statistics as to why that's not safe, when they don't have, evidence-based reasons why not. And then other places may recognize it. So there can be things as far as that, where you're limited to the type of birth experience that you may want to have. Um, and so, um, I'm sorry, lost my train of thought. But yeah, so you have like CNMs. So those are going to be like, you study to be a nurse, or you begin as a nurse, and then you study to become a midwife, and you go that route. There are CPMs, traditional midwives. There are ones that I myself and other doulas are going as far as the PEP route, which is a more self-taught way to become a doula. I mean, to become a midwife. And so with that, you also have to look at, what does your state recognize as officially a midwife. And the last thing that I would say specifically about midwives is, the other side of that is, what true midwifery is about is, it actually comes from granny midwives. So granny midwives are Black traditional midwives, They attended about 75% of births in the 1940s, and they are typically predominant in the Southeast US area. And so, but since the 1800s, though, um, white males have created, medicalized birth, the birth that we know and see today in hospitals and we see, glamorized on TV. And simultaneously considering those Black midwives as lay midwives, or they're dirty, or they're uneducated, when these are things that were taught by them through generations. And so, much like today, what has happened is that they completely persecuted those Black granny midwives. And now we have to do a regulated midwifery, or you have to have the certificates to be a midwife. Um, and these are structures that essentially make it to where most states barely have midwives. I know Alabama, for example, they just legalized, I believe it was CPMs in 2019. And so, yeah, having, and even regardless of that, the southern states in general, it takes maybe an hour to 2 hours to even get to a hospital, on top of the fact that you're limited to, having holistic care, or having a midwife in the area that won't be, given a felony for trying to assist your birth because your state doesn't recognize it. So in the end, both a doula and a midwife, they are both necessary, but one doesn't replace the other for sure.
So you have said so much information that holds so much weight, and I was just thinking about questions when you were saying things. So the first thing I thought about was, can we talk about lotus births and the benefits of keeping the placenta with your child? Because that's something that I've considered. I don't plan on having kids for a long time, but just knowing the nutrients and vitamins that grow from inside our wombs and how it's cut off as soon as the baby is brought into the world, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. And so, can we talk a little bit about what a lotus birth is and why some people opt to do that?
Yes. And so there is a doula, Sacred Birth Doula. I believe she's based in New York. I don't want to say that wrong if she's not there, but she was one of the first people that I saw advocating for lotus births. And she has something called a Know Your Rights packet that actually you give to the hospital when you go in, that tells them all the things that you don't want, and it's a legally binding packet to ensure that you are not pressured into making choices that you don't want. And so how that pertains to a lotus birth is, um, so normally when you give birth, not too much long after your child is born, they will, clamp the cord and cut it. And so what that does is it doesn't give the baby the chance to allow all of that blood, all of the nutrients, all of the stem cells, all of, the beautiful things that will help their body develop, um, and prepare for the world. You pretty much destroyed that opportunity for them to get that. A lot of times babies come out much more gray, much more, very like pale colored, because they did not allow all of that blood to pulsate. And you can even look at the umbilical cord after birth, and you can see the veins going through, and you can see when the blood has completely drained out. And what's astonishing to me is that a patient or a client can go and talk to their provider and say, I want, to at least, even if you don't do a lotus birth, I want to at least have something called delayed cord clamping. They will only give you 5 minutes for all of that blood to pump inside of the baby. And so what you would actually want is about an hour. So if they're saying, "Oh yeah, we do delayed cord clamping," but then they only give you like between 2 to 5 minutes for that blood to pass through, they're not really helping. Or if you're not even looking at your own placenta or looking at your own umbilical cord to validate that the blood has completely transitioned back into the baby, uh, you're not even seeing that, and you're just blindly, allowing them to dictate when it's time to cut. Now, a lotus birth itself, So what you would typically do to store and like, what the intention is that when you're at home that first week or so, you typically will be resting. You'll be breastfeeding, you'll be bonding or formula feeding, whatever you want, but you're going to be for the most part laying down recovering with your new child. And during that time, just like with a cut or severed umbilical cord, it's going to dry out between 3 to 10 days. And so, if it's attached to the placenta, you have a placenta bag that it goes in. So, doulas, which this all connects to our Southern tradition, the Black heritage, where we put herbs, salt, different things on the placenta that will dry it out and actually get rid of any smells or aromas that come with that. It stays inside of the bag the entire time, and between that time frame, it will naturally fall off. And so it definitely has its benefits health wise. Simultaneously, just like with the lotus birth, the other part that's detrimental to a newborn coming into the world is not getting their microbiome. And so a lot of people don't know what that is. A lot of people don't discuss it very specific like that. But the microbiome is what a newborn ingests when they come out of the birth canal. They also get it when they breastfeed, when they're all on your, doing skin to skin, all of those organisms and germs, all those good things are going inside and creating gut flora. And what's amazing about it is that's the same microbiome that came from the very first, maternal person in your family line. It's been passed down and has transitioned and adjusted to the world outside us to prepare your child for the world. So there's so many different complexities in birth that if we just sit and talk about it, it can definitely give you more perspective on what your options truly are, and give yourself a more well-rounded birth experience.
So, just to talk a little bit more about the placenta. So, I know that you mentioned that when you do a lotus birth, like you can take the placenta home with you and dry it out. I know that some families like to put the placenta in a supplement or eat it. At that point, do you have to wait until it's dry, or like, do you know how does that work?
So it's honestly, you have to choose which one you want to do. And so you're either doing, which you can, of course, you can do the delayed cord clamping and you can allow all of the blood to flow out, of course. But if you're going to do that and, allow the lotus birth to happen, it has to stay attached to the baby at that point. So if you're going to do placenta encapsulation, placenta tinctures, or anything to that regard, it's recommended to just go ahead and delay any clamping or cutting until everything has flowed out, and then preserve the placenta, put it in a cooler, and then allow the doula to go ahead and prepare it for you or someone specific, because not all doulas placenta encapsulate, but there are people that are specialized in that as well. Um, and then you just either prepare it for a tincture that's going to be involving alcohol, things like that. If there are people that just want to eat it, there's is certain ways to preserve it in the freezer, because they may make smoothies out of it. I know placenta encapsulation is more along the lines of putting it. I've seen where there are dehydrators you can use. Um, Even like coffee grinders or different things like that specifically for the placenta, of course. And you're grinding it into a powder, putting it in the placenta capsules, and then consuming those throughout your postpartum recovery. There are plenty of benefits, even back in the day, like the traditional way. Like if a mom was hemorrhaging, a midwife would take a piece of the placenta, put it inside the cheek of the mom that was hemorrhaging, and um, it would trigger that blood to stop flowing. And so there's a lot of benefits and benefits and things that come through with placentas, just period consumption, as far as like having more energy, boosting mood. There's a lot of different research that's out there. Definitely recommend people to do their own research that's evidence based before either siding or disregarding it as well, because I do understand we are in a very um scientific realm with the medical as well as the holistic side.
I think it's so interesting, like the connection between mother and baby, like
Mhm.
emotionally, and how that's reflected physically. Like how when a mother can tell that their baby is sick and their breast milk changes because the antibodies in their body are now in the breast milk. I think that's so amazing. And how you just brought up how a midwife will put a piece of the placenta in their mouth to trigger hormones to stop hemorrhaging. I think that's amazing. It's interesting because I'm taking a class right now called narrative medicine.
Mhm.
And we talk a lot about gender and just different things in medicine. It's crazy because right now we're talking about um, the history of gynecology. And I say that because you brought up how I think you called it granny midwifery or
Yes,
yes.
granny midwives.
And I see pictures on the internet of like black women back when slavery was a real thing in our country, and they would be nursing and breastfeeding white babies. And these were the babies of like slave masters, or maybe even their children, because their slave master raped them or they were there to
Mhm.
have children with them. And so, it's just interesting because we also talk about in this class, we're talking about the father of gynecology. I don't even know his real name. I really don't.
J. Marion Sims.
Yes, that man. If you guys don't know, he is considered the father of gynecology, and he would perform extremely invasive procedures on black slaves, and their justification was that they were learning about the anatomy and physiology of the reproductive system. um, and I won't go into detail about how I feel about that. I don't think it's right at all, but I brought that up because I just kind of wanted us to just talk about how men kind of controlled gynecology for a very long period of time. And even though gynecology and diversity in healthcare is changing, like for instance, we had Dr. Dickens in our first couple of slides. I find it so crazy how men could dominate a field that is literally about women, like literally about the female reproductive system, and how for years they just dominated this field and they were able to do things that were severely unethical. I think that's crazy. Sometimes I even wonder why men want to become gynecologists. I'm sure everybody has their own reasons why. Maybe they have a certain experience, but I don't know. I just feel like, and I'm gonna keep it a G. Like, I don't feel like men should be gynecologists. Like, This is a safe space. Like, I don't feel like men should be gynecologists. I just feel like, and if anybody wants to chime in and put any input in, I would love to hear it. But I personally could never see myself going to a male gynecologist. I've never been to one. I just feel like I would rather have someone who has the same anatomy as me and can understand the pain that I'm going through, or at least relate on some type of level, than a man. So I just wanted to bring that up because you brought up how granny midwifery and how men dominated and changed gynecology for so many years. So I'm glad to see that we have new birth workers like yourself, and so many other brown women who are coming in just trying to change healthcare and change the birthing experience, because I feel like so many times in healthcare and medicine, like I said earlier, so many healthcare professionals just look at these women as a disease or look at these women as a patient. And there's so many other things that go into literally bringing new life into this world. Like, it's crazy to me. But I won't rant for too much longer. The next question is, how do you interact with the mother and father? So I guess, how does that look like before she's pregnant and postpartum?
Okay. So, um, in a scenario where you have a couple, which I feel like this can be, you can replace this or substitute it with any person. Who it could be, this could be the grandma, this could be the sibling or whatever. um but my goal for couples, are referring to like a mother and a father. um I definitely want them both to have just as much value, in the work that I do. I don't want to make the father or the dad feel, any less important, or just someone that has to make sure that they're present. Um, as well as I don't want the focus to solely be on, um, more on the birthing person. It's kind of like it's a dance between the two, because those two individuals, whether, they're married or not, um, the relationship between those two beings, it honestly dictates the flow of the birth. And when dads are typically present, and not just present, they learn, they, because nobody knows. And I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on like, oh, guys don't really get it, or guys don't really know anything. And for a very long time, men were never really present at a birth. And to see now more generations of men that want to be present and learn as much as they can on how to best support, their partner, through this journey, it's definitely important for me. And even seeing how my own partner has, learned so much from me, as well as just, going through the experience of being a parent. It's it's almost, natural now, of course, going into three children, how that fluidity, has to be there. And so what I do with the mom and dad, so in the beginning, when we first discuss like services and things like that, we definitely talk about their relationship. Not to say like what's going on in your relationship, but more along the lines of like, how long have you been together? How do you guys feel about each other? What have been, some upcoming challenges? What are some victories, some things that you guys, um love about each other, or see in each other, that are your strengths? And we develop their relationship throughout the journey, even more so, because you can be a couple, together as like 8, 10 years, or you can be together for only a few months. And throughout the education process, doing different practices, together, I see them, bond in a lot of different ways. And so specifically, the main focus is for them to develop their relationship and develop their journey together through this, because they're the person, that support person is going to be present during that birth, hopefully. And then, also individually developing their feelings, like what are your fears about this birth? What, what comes up for you when you think about your journey at this point, or whatever their situation is, and how they feel individually, because that's also a key contributing factor in how everything else pans out. And, as of course, you do the education on the, the anatomical level, because you want them to know what's happening inside their body. As far as the birthing person, you want to know where your baby is, not in your stomach, inside your uterus, for example. um Even the support person needs to know that as well. um how to condition themselves for birth, so the partner as well as the birthing person, what nutrition looks like, and how we can integrate that for you throughout your journey. um how can we integrate preparing your body physically, as far as like doing some walking, doing different, yoga for prenatal, doing different, comfort measures, and practicing those things, to prepare for birth. I love to, right after we do our birth plan together, which means they would have done childbirth ed, or we've already discussed things and they've done their birth plan. Then we can start talking about like, okay, these are comfort measures. What do you like? Do you like aromatherapy? Do you like, gentle massage? Do you enjoy, being in a dim lit room? Like, what does it look like for you when you are um, in discomfort? Because a lot of times people just generalize everything as pain. So what what does that look like for you when you're, uncomfortable? The other side of it is, if there needs to be any healing, if there needs to be, if there's any current or past trauma, whether that be with the birthing person, because there could be sexual trauma, there could be, emotional trauma just from, I know for personally for myself, there is trauma or there has been um, intergenerational damage from just relationships and family. And that can have a huge impact on how you choose to live your own life. And creating space to process and heal. So that way we get it, not just saying to get it out of the way, but we're healing so that you can truly embrace and enjoy your pregnancy. Um, so self-care is also another thing because I know that like there's always this connotation of like a dad or a father is always the one that's like oh, he gets to go do whatever he wants to do, or like he, he's not carrying the baby. A lot of times dads that or partners or parents that are very present in, in their family's life, they're doing a lot of work behind the scenes that we don't look at. So what does self-care look like for them? Because when they're at 100%, they can support that birthing person at 100%, as well as the mother or the, the birthing person. We need to get out of the mindset, I'm saying that to myself as well, that we are not super moms. I know that I do things that are super mom, I go above and beyond. And but simultaneously I can't continue to make myself feel like I have to do everything. I have to give some of that to my partner. I have to give that to some of the people that I consider my support in my life and things like that. So that I can have time for self-care. What are the things that I like to do? What ways can I balance out that stress? Since we talked about chronic stressors before, the cortisol levels inside of Black people compared to white, it's continuous throughout. If we encounter something that is stressful in life, not just a lynching, not just continuous oppression, it's like the day to day, like my bills, a snowstorm that just happened, all of the things that are happening to us on a day to day basis that impact our worlds. um what ways can we release that stress for you, or how can you have that time to put yourself at the forefront? Because a lot of times people believe that once you have a kid, your life's over. You don't matter once you're pregnant. It's really just about baking this baby. And we have to get out of those mindsets for better birth outcomes as well. um yeah, the other side for the, as far as the support person, is advocacy. So when I kind of jumped around about advocacy earlier. So when you typically are having a hospital, this can happen in a birth center, this can happen with a midwife as well. This can even happen with a Black provider. When you are in spaces where, if you're not used to speaking up for things, coming from being a union organizer and trying to motivate people to speak up when they have been wronged, when you're dealing with a doctor or just a medical provider, more times than not, when you're sitting in that appointment with them, you're just listening to a bunch of information, not really asking any questions. You're just saying okay to the next steps. And then you're just kind of going throughout, going through the motions. And that's what ends up bringing about trauma. That's what ends up bringing about things that you didn't expect. All of this, like, I'll just wing it and I'll just hope for the best type of energy is always around birth, especially within our Black and Brown communities. And so the support partner, as they learn about education, as they learn about, making sure that they know what the birth plan is. So when they're in that space and a nurse brings something up that isn't what they said they wanted in their birth plan, or does something disrespectful, what do we do in those moments? How can you step in and prevent this from happening? Or how can you ensure that that your birthing person is getting the hydration that they need, and keeping them motivated through the contractions? It's so many different things that they have to navigate. So that's why we focus in on them individually first, so that way they can be fully prepared to pick up on signs, such as like where we've seen um Black women that have died, where it'll be that they're neglected for hours and hours and their vitals are not looking good, or in situations similar to Shasia, where she had an epidural that was done wrong. And we're dealing with the situation where we're losing a Black mother unnecessarily. So it's definitely a very complex but beautiful journey dealing with the parents of the child for sure.
So it's very complex. I guess I didn't. I guess I was like aware that these things existed, but not until you actually just said them. It's like, wow, like there are so many things that actually go into making sure that not only the baby is healthy, but the mother and the father are like mentally, emotionally, and like just prepared. Um, so, what does postpartum care look like after birth? Because I know that you said that you are involved with these families even after the delivery of their child. So, what does that look like?
Yes. And so every doula, because look, I have my definition of what I believe a doula is. I believe that the goals that I have for Black and Brown communities and ensuring that their health is to the standard, and we're preventing, postpartum preeclampsia or different, hemorrhaging issues, postpartum depression. We're acting on those things as soon as we see them. And so not every doula does what I do. So just keeping that in mind as well. And so they have their own length. As far as the depth, like how in depth they are in their care, maybe it's just a couple prenatals, a couple postpartum visits. They're present at the birth. And then that's just, it is what it is. That's why it's kind of like, because our industry is unregulated, which I believe is the beautiful thing about it, because we're not controlled by any, to a certain extent, we're not controlled. We are a lot, especially during COVID. But um, it's honestly, people are being trained to do bare minimum. I actively choose to do above and beyond because I know that it's needed. And so what that looks like is for postpartum. So the immediate postpartum, babies just come out. So most doulas may stay maybe an hour to 2 hours after the immediate postpartum to establish breastfeeding, to ensure that everything has gone as far as the birth itself, any of the newborn tests, just assessing where the family or the birthing person and their support, making sure that they are in a mental space of processing how do you feel, um, what are you thinking about your birth experience, just kind of talking about those things. But the main focus for sure is getting that initial latch, ensuring that mom got to have that skin to skin, things like that. And so but then after that, sometimes because they're recovering at the hospital, I know for me, I'm checking in every day. I know that with the situation in the hospital space is different because of the regulations regarding the pandemic. um so maybe I'm virtually calling them, maybe I'm talking to dad. um and then once they've arrived home, I know that many doulas may do like one or two postpartum visits throughout that. Maybe they do like a little package and it's like just two postpartum visits and that's it. um but the other thing that can happen is the postpartum care can actually transition into something that's hourly, where we have doula agencies and things as well, where the doula comes in. Maybe mom needs rest in those first couple of weeks. So we're focusing on caring for the newborn while mom gets rest, or goes needs to go take a shower. Or maybe there are other siblings that are young and need to be tended to. So it's kind of like a transition into supporting in other areas. That can look like doing light laundry. That could be warming up the food for her, if that client has a cesarean section, just helping her to the bathroom, ensuring that they took their medication, asking them things, and just stuff like that. If they want to go outside, get some time for them. um, it's honestly about them resting and recovering. So that's the other side of postpartum care. um, Most birthing people do not see their provider again until like 6 to 8 weeks after they've given birth. you will go to take your baby to like their newborn, like the little 2 week checkup, then the 2 month checkup, but you're literally going for 2 months without seeing someone. And um, most complications that are happening in Black women are happening in the postpartum. It's a lot of like not saying anything, a lot of not building that relationship, because if I'm going to all of my prenatals, I'm not really talking about much of anything. I didn't really develop a relationship. They just showed up to help deliver my baby. I don't really think, that it's much that I can do further or say anything further until it's kind of too late and we're rushing to the ER. The other side that I'd like to talk about too is when you are going to those postpartum appointments with your OB or your midwife or whatever, they give you these little forms to assess your postpartum depression or if you have these signs. And I think that it's very condescending because more times than not, most women, like in low income situations, you are on Medicaid. And that is one of the health insurances that is very quick. Um, I was fortunate enough to have mental health support with Medicaid through like Healthy Texas Women's in the postpartum with my second child. But aside from that, not too long after you give birth, those benefits are gone. And if you can't afford a therapist, if you can't afford, the things that are needed, and a lot of times there is this fear and distrust around if I talk about certain things, I will, have CPS reported on me, or I have these outcomes. And that has happened in the past where doctors will say, "Oh yeah, it's confidential. Definitely tell me everything." Especially during things like the crack pandemic, especially during things now with situations with marijuana use and things like that. No one will feel comfortable talking about their situation with a provider, and you're ending up with just complete silence, and then they're suffering in some cases alone. So for myself, I do see my client. I'm there in the immediate postpartum. I check in with them periodically when they arrive home. We do maybe like a in-person visit for sure. And then every week of postpartum recovery for those 6 weeks, we're either doing an in-person or a virtual session. So I'm either coming over to see how things are, if you need anything, or virtually we're talking. How's self-care going? How is support going? The other thing that I do a little bit before, I want to say like around 37 weeks, I've kind of called this the baby shower support contact, because whenever you have a baby shower or a gender reveal, you tend to invite all of your family and friends, that person you knew from high school, all these other people into the space. And a lot of times those people aren't there when you're, adjusting to a newborn. So we practice going down these lists of people. We create a list of the things that you would want as far as support. Do you need somebody to help you with laundry? You need somebody to help, go pick up groceries. You need somebody to, prep food, or help around the house, or hold the baby for this period of time or that period of time. And then calling those folks and seeing if they can come and support. And so during the postpartum, we're assessing like, okay, has support come? Like, what does that look like? Do you need to have me come in and be, support for you during that time? And after those 6 weeks of recovery, I connect most of my clients together. I'm a part of a doula collective called Maternity Journey, where we have monthly mom meetups virtually. I'm also a part of a gardening group here in the community of Houston, and we all come together and learn how to be self-sustainable and connect with other parents and even folks that aren't parents. We do stuff together and learn how to cultivate the land and do things that our ancestors used to do. And so I'm pushing them into area, or not necessarily pushing them, but I'm offering them opportunities to connect with other folks, building new senses of family or community. um, and then outside of that, I'm checking in with them at all of their child's milestones. So at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, I'm checking in with you just to see how things have been over the month, because especially things like postpartum depression, which I've experienced, um, it can begin as early as before. or during pregnancy, and it can last all the way until a year after postpartum. So it's very necessary to continue that support. How are you? How have you been? Have you had time for self? All these different things that need to be put in the forefront for that for those moms. And yeah, that's what postpartum care looks like.
It sounds like you are, I know you say you're not like a superhero or mom, but
Yeah.
it's just amazing that you guys, or you in particular, just continue the support and continue checking up with these mothers and these families months after they've already had their babies, and then like going to their house to help them and just assisting in the adjustment of being at home with the new little person. I think that's amazing. You brought up postpartum depression, and that in itself is just a topic in itself. Um, but let's talk about it. Like, what is that, and why do mothers experience that? Because I guess the thought is like, well, you just had a baby. Why aren't you like joyful and brilliant and happy? Like your new bundle of joy is here. But why does postpartum depression happen? And if you don't mind, like, could you speak a little bit about your experience?
So as far as my experience, postpartum depression is something that, because I've seen online where it's like, okay, baby blues is something that only lasts for like 7 to 10 days. I feel like you can't necessarily measure um someone's emotional state. And I believe that because it's crazy, I watched a live yesterday talking about um you don't owe anyone your suffering. And so what that means is that as human beings, you can be in emotional challenges and hardships, and then in certain instances things can bring you joy, whether you owe anyone money, whether you're a mom and have children that need you, and you have all these other obligations, and you can feel down. But postpartum depression, I feel, it's honestly an internalized journey, because just jumping back to chronic stressors, jumping back to the cortisol levels and the ways that we have learned to internalize our emotions, it's definitely that much more intense when you are pregnant. I've seen studies where they compare it to if a pregnant person was consuming alcohol on a consistent basis while pregnant, or consuming drugs, the effects that it has on babies as far as their birth weight, as far as health concerns. It's just as extreme when you are stressed out. And for me, I have taught myself to, um, when things upset me, or when I have been hurt in ways that's been from being a child even to now, I tend to continue moving on without actually taking the time to embrace if I was sad about it, if I was mad about it, if something disturbed me, or whatever the case. And so what's happened now is I will feel numb to a certain extent. Like, of course, I can laugh, I'm good. I can feel the same emotions, but when things are happening to me, it kind of feels like I'm not truly there, because my mind is just like, it's just like training or working out or whatever. I've developed this for 20 something years, where I have internalized this because maybe that's what I've seen. Maybe I never felt free to speak growing up, um, and being someone that I wasn't, as we go through life and things like that. And so that was something that I thought I could push off. But once I got pregnant, the same circumstances in my life were there. It's just more intensified now that I'm pregnant. But for a lot of the time, it's like not facing the things that are prevalent, or actively having free space to truly be who you want to be. um it shows up, and I believe that that is a contributing factor, because you are being told so many different things about what a mom is supposed to be, what a successful parent looks like, what a even just the dynamics of like, did you graduate college? Did you get married before you had those kids? Did all these different things that are put on us, that even our own families have presented to us out of fear. All of this is based in fear. So um thinking about that and then having to adjust yourself from being not just an individual, but being a parent, and then also factoring in other things. Um, and having to really heal yourself, heal your child self from things that you experienced before. Um, it's all a part of that process. And what postpartum depression does, it honestly, it could look like me talking to you right now, and then later on I'm going to be not wanting to move or get up, or not in the mood. I know for sure in my past couple of pregnancies, where things were stressful or things were difficult for me, definitely like compulsive, like cleaning and frantic, which people call that, I know like in pregnancy we have nesting, not to get that confused, but it can be a hyper like nesting where you're like trying to make sure everything is lined up, trying to control things even when you know things aren't in your control. um it could be outbursts of emotion, it could be something completely different. I honestly believe it's fluid to the person, but it all is based on what is your lifestyle like, how are you processing your emotions, what is your support like, and how free do you feel to be who you are authentically. I think that that all boils down to what affects depression, and what affects what your mental looks like, compared to, on top of that, all the things that we face as black or brown people, on top of that, and then constantly navigating through all these different factors all the time every day.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Wow, I think it's important that you brought up like how postpartum depression is really subjective to the person, because every woman has their different triggers or different traumas, or different things that they need to heal, like you said, with your inner child. And so I mean, I can't really speak on it because I'm not a mother. um but you just said a mouthful, and thank you for sharing your experience. um
Thank you. I would say though, people tend to say that I'm not a parent, so I can't really relate, or I can't really speak on it. But you were a child though. You
mhm,
were raised by people that were trying to make sense of what a parent, or how to be that for you. So
mhm,
I do want you to have, that space for yourself to truly tap into what was my experience like. It's different than trying to tell a parent how to be a parent, but
mhm,
definitely connect with how did that feel for you, growing up, or if you had siblings, or, how that correlated to you, or someone that you knew that was going through pregnancy, and how you were affected by that, or what you even thought about it. So definitely be aware and hold space for those things too, because it's just as valid.
mhm. I like that you said that, because I think a lot of time, this is like so personal, y'all, but like I won't really go into too much detail on it, but a lot of my close friends are on this call, and I have like mother issues. So one thing that like I feel like I want to be very aware of, or that when I do have children, that I'm going to be like have a heightened sense of awareness of, is like not doing the things that my mother did when I was being raised as a child. And so like I can only imagine how like amplified that is when you're actually pregnant, or when you actually like have a baby, and like you're just reflecting on, like you said, like how you were raised, or maybe the generational curses, or things that you saw reflected in your parents, and you don't want to reflect that, or maybe you have that fear as a new parent or as a new mother. um,
Definitely, definitely. I will say that what I know that I do, which I feel like is the most important thing, is you can be aware of all of the things that happened, and then you can also see things that you will do, because you cannot prevent 100% of those things. You
mhm,
can't. And you have to honestly give yourself grace. You have to honestly, not be too hard on yourself about it. You have to actively practice. It's like a muscle, like we said before, in integrating self-care and putting yourself in the forefront. Same with parenthood. I have to always remind myself that my child had or my children have to adjust to me as well as me adjusting to them. A part of it too is breaking out of that inferiority complex, because we put children in the same area as a a sub level thing. And because I said so, and so on and so forth. Like, we put kids in places, and it's honestly something that we have to re-network in our mind, because we're literally copying what other people did. And after thinking about it long enough, I can see how in slavery and segregation and all these other instances, but specifically with slavery, I can imagine a master telling a slave all the things that we have heard, as far as in generations of things that just don't make sense. Um, in the aspects of like how we see ourselves, how we raise our kids, and it all ties into that culture. So just continuing to be aware, and that relates to birth, it relates to holistic health for all people, not just in birth. Um, Being aware and actually having space and having community, to also, process and heal through that.
Thank you for that. That's super important that you brought that up. So these last two questions, I feel like you maybe already talked about them. They're kind of intertwined with each other. So I guess we can go ahead and just talk about it. So do you work with any midwives or OB-GYNs or nurses, or do you work with any medical professionals in the work that you do?
So currently, no, I'm not actively working with any midwives, but or OBs or anything. I am open to working with anyone. But what I will say is that, like, as I said before, I'm in a student midwives group. So there's a lot of, especially with the doula community, we're very well known on Instagram and Facebook and the things that we do, and we end up knowing each other over time. And so I'm in this student midwives group where some of us are pursuing midwifery, going the PEP route. A couple of us are going through actual, universities and going through that route. Some of us want to go into more independent midwifery, or doing things along the lines of giving free birthing options that work around the law, so that you can work in a space that isn't regulated, or isn't a more oppressed version of the care that we'd like to give. And so my goals are to work with as many, especially new generations of our Black and Brown OB-GYNs, midwives, whatever you are. We want to work with you so that way we can refer our clients to you, so that you guys, we know that you got the information. You are actively trying to integrate a more a
Holistic.
more holistic birth space, as well as giving those people autonomous choices, giving them the ability to um, work together and lead the care that they want. So I definitely plan on doing that, as well as I have dreams and goals to have a freestanding birth center. So it's so many different options. And I feel like we shouldn't just look at it as a structure, like, oh, I just have to study, go to school, cram, and then just do this one thing forever in this institution. You have the ability to do so much and impact our community in ways that you didn't even think before.
Mhm.
So,
Thank you for that. I think that the relationship and connection between like OB-GYNs or OB nurses and holistic health workers like you is super important, because everybody is essentially at the end of the day trying to uplift the family and the mother and make sure that
mhm.
there's a healthy delivery process. So I think that that relationship is essential. Like, it shouldn't be neglected at all. So the next question that we have or want you to answer for us is, why are, and I won't say doulas, but why are full spectrum birth workers important in maternal health? Or what's your philosophy, or why do you think that you guys are essential?
Okay. And so these responses that I'm giving, I felt that I needed to because my fellow doula sister, Sierra McLean Henry, she is of her business is called Sankofa Mama. Um, she did a panel with, I believe it was McGovern Med School, I believe, and she talked with them because they have like this bill that's supposed to be passed to extend Medicaid coverage to doulas, and that looks like something that's exciting, but it also is something that we are concerned about because it may limit us
Mm,
to having to recertify and train through organizations that are based not in advocacy, not in holistic care, stem from oppressive nature. And we're wanting to make sure that whatever is done well in a well-rounded manner that can give us the opportunity to continue our work and not cause a detrimental hardship.
mm,
So to answer the question, why are doulas important in maternal health? Um, as a doula or birth worker, my role is to bridge the gap where a person's provider will fall short in the holistic spectrum, as well as the challenges of providers in medical industrial complexes. I call them MIC, institutions, etc. We pretty much do a triage version of various levels of care. So it can honestly be that some clients need education and information because they may not feel comfortable speaking with the provider, or they have been discouraged to communicate and felt that they've lost autonomy over their bodies. And so that can be a scenario and we have to adjust to that person, as well as what we said before is clients experiencing trauma or needing certain additional support as well. um, and so the other side of, the holistic support and, being advocates, we reveal underlying truths. And so some of the biggest barriers in maternal and holistic healthcare access for folks include racism, implicit bias, understaffing. So even being in a hospital with a nurse, that nurse has to cover way more patients than what's in the policy, more times than not. Um, and that's also another side of it as well. So you're getting a tired, provider, or you're getting someone, there to support you through your birth that's honestly just trying to get the job done most times. There is limited resources, fear based and condescending maternal care, routine care assessments when they are unnecessary and depowering. Um, and not everybody, if you have individualized care, that same routine won't match what that person needs. Medicaid plans with gaps and expensive costs for care overall. Policymakers in our cities and in hospitals or slash birthing spaces who are out of touch with the people who they aim to assist. Definitely looking at the people that are claiming that they want to work towards, because it's really a trend right now. The maternal mortality, infant mortality, morbidity, all these different things, they sound so good to say that you're working towards. But then if I see on your page, you're not doing things to help your community, you're not tapping into um, helping and healing um, the BIPOC community in your area, then you're not necessarily going to be doing those things. It doesn't match up. Not enough attention to doulas as a resource available to all birthing people.
mm,
Hardly ever you see people recommending, whether it's just a friend or anything. You hardly ever hear somebody saying, "Oh, do you have a doula?" How about instead of us buying all of these things for your gender reveal or your baby shower, let's put money together to invest in a doula? Because that's also one of the main reasons people feel that they don't, think that it's necessary. They don't even know that it's necessary. And then sometimes money can be a factor. The oppression lying in medicalized care policy and state laws and regulation, and the suppression of midwives, doulas, and other forms of birth work to limit the access to holistic care. So that's one main aspect of what we essentially, most of us, I won't say all of us do, but most of us that are out here on the front lines doing the work, we are consistently trying to bring this up for people. The other side of birth work in the aspects of maternal and holistic care, as a doula, that I believe is essential in ensuring our communities are informed on how to best prepare themselves for any aspect of birth includes preparing for conception, what that looks like, family planning, and not just, okay, let's give you resources for Planned Parenthood. Maybe they don't want that. Maybe they don't want birth control. Maybe they want other alternatives than, what's being presented to them. What are different ways that we can prepare someone to be as ready as possible for a family? Tackling anemia and other conditions before conception, regulating menstrual cycles before conception. That's another issue that is heavy in Black community, is not knowing when you're ovulating, not knowing um, how to connect nutrition, even things such as which people, don't really recognize. They don't introduce things like yoni steaming and other options to regulate menstrual cycles. Proper and effective preparations, including nutrition in pregnancy and birth, birth and postpartum connection to diet and wellness as well, focusing on that emotional and spiritual support. And finally, clear language and removing myths around systemic racism, implicit bias, purity culture, sex education, parenting, and more. So once we break down what have they been telling us or what have we learned so far through life that isn't corresponding with how we actually live life, let's break down those myths, educate you on what's accurate and real. Then from there, make your decisions. And here is the, our options to have a more holistic approach to the ways that you go about life.
Hmm.
So yeah.
That's, the education part is really important. Have you ever dealt with any like teen pregnancies or younger moms?
I unfortunately have not had teen moms yet. I have been wanting to have that experience. And the reason being because I have been a teenager and have seen teenage girls be pregnant in high school, and I either was silent in the judgment or I was complicit in the judgment, and have seen, them make the choice to go ahead and study and test out and leave. And, we never see them again because of the persecution and the judgment. Um, as well as I believe teens in general too want to prove that they can do it, that they got this. And giving them that space to truly feel liberated as well, I would be more than happy to offer um services to teens for sure. That's definitely been something that I've wanted to do. I have so far served, like, I want to say I've assisted with 3 births so far. I have clients currently that are pregnant, and I've had an opportunity to work with Black and Brown families so far, and it's been awesome. So I definitely am opening myself up to have any type of birthing person come my way so that I can serve them in the best way.
Aw. So I'm glad that you kind of like brought up your experience in the family that you work with and how many, because we just want you to share your philosophy on childbirth, or just share your experience about how being a full spectrum birth worker has benefited you or created new connections with friends or family.
Mm. So honestly, as I said before, I was doing union work for about 3 years before I became a birth worker. And so it was a lot of like feeling this militant energy, like I wanted to fight for the people, I wanted to do the things that were necessary to enlighten folks. And a lot of times if you're only one person doing the work, it's going to be an uphill battle. And so that ended up transitioning when I got pregnant for a second time and having my daughter, and facing, emotional struggle. And then I decided to tap into self care. So I started doing yoga with someone virtually. She ended up connecting me to a birth worker that just so happened to be someone that I attended high school with. We knew of each other, but we're never friends. And so from that person, she has connected me to people that used to be her clients. They've turned into friends. I found so many different birth workers here in the Houston community that are my sisters, that are my, my forever friends. And we either all, have children, or we have similar philosophies on life, and that's brought us so much more closer together, and we uplift each other consistently um in the things that we do individually and not just as the collective. So I definitely am grateful for this path that I'm on, because without it, I honestly would not have the family that I do, because I have chosen, of course I have kids, have my partner, but I am actively choosing the family and the tribe that I want. And I definitely believe that it's beautiful to have work that is dual. It's the duality between the work and the the family time. So it's awesome. And as far as my philosophy on childbirth itself, with Texas being number 41 of the worst places to give birth in the United States, I honestly believe the healthiest and safest outcomes for Black birthing people and their babies happen with autonomous and informed choice and through holistic, individualized care. Education and divestment actions in our communities by the people, rather than waiting for policies and laws to fix things over time, and then expecting the maternal and infant mortality slash morbidity rates to magically decline. This includes care for incarcerated folks too. So what I mean by this, there is a midwife. She is a certified nurse midwife out in Gainesville, Alabama. Her name is Dr. Stephanie Mitchell. She is working towards building the 12th freestanding birth center. Alabama is the worst place. I believe they're number 51 of places to give birth. And as I said before, they recently legalized certain aspects of midwifery. I believe they stopped. I think 2018 was the last time they had arrested someone or given a felony for doing or practicing midwifery without regulation. And in her situation, she's had to, right now, being like a 10-year plus labor and delivery nurse and certified nurse midwife, she's had to retrain to be a CPM. And so what she's chosen to do is have a platform on Instagram virtually educating folks every day, or every week, I won't say every day, every week, um about ways that they can amplify her message or donate and contribute to building this freestanding birth center. And so I honestly believe that that is the goal from here. I want something that is along the lines of a birth center slash community center here in Houston, and also implementing this and offering spaces throughout Texas and the South as a whole. And for our incarcerated folks, too many times, and just recently I saw a story where a lady, I can't remember the place, she had to sever or cut her umbilical cord with her teeth. She was left to fend for herself. And the prison industrial complex, the medical industrial complex, the labor complex, it's all intertwined. They all come from slavery. And so when you are incarcerated, that 13th Amendment, which pretty much says everybody's free except prisoners, all the prisoners are slaves. And so we need to do what we can to transform the United States, which has the worst, I believe, one of the worst um, incarceration institutions. And when it comes to people birthing, it's not safe at all. So the other side of that is we need to. I believe that as far as childbirth goes, we need to support and recommend getting doula support as soon as possible to all pregnant people. So the latest needs to be the second trimester, because it shouldn't be a situation where you're showing up to me, you're due next week, and you were thinking about a doula the whole time and didn't know and weren't sure and need somebody to support you.
Mhm.
Um, Building and funding freestanding birth centers, and this, and honestly the other side of this, because that's my whole, the main points that I believe are the philosophy. But my call to anyone that is currently studying to do anything in the medical field, anyone that is considering to do anything with building the community in any way, even like with University of Houston, any schools, any boards, any of those complexes in that as well in education, aside from doing conversations like this, definitely ask yourself, like if you're moving towards unbiased, systemically oppressive, and limiting care, if you believe that you're not doing that, ask yourself, do you know the hardships Black and Brown birth workers and people experience as a marginalized group? What are you doing to offset the costs and the hardships? What are your personal reparations to the cause? What is your university, college, school of nursing, medicine, etc.? What are their hiring practices? So the people that are on the board, the people that run the school, what do they look like? What are their beliefs? How do they truly feel, and what do they truly do for the community as a whole? Does the curriculum you learn reflect holistic care and navigating systemic barriers in place? Are they just skimming over Black history like they did in many of our schools when we were growing up? Are they just kind of saying that Black Lives Matter and the whole white coats for Black lives? Are we only saying those things and then not really doing anything else? Um, what do your tenured professors, work staff look like, furthermore? And what are you doing to make change in the systems around you?
I think that, you said a lot, and it's all it's all connected, because like at the end of the day, and things are slowly changing, but you brought up the fact of like what are the curriculums that we learn, do they reflect these things? And the harsh reality is they don't. And even though these things are changing, like you said, medicine is not set up to benefit brown people. Like that's just the harsh reality. So it's important that, and this is why we want to have this conversation, is because so many times healthcare professionals are not educated on these type of things. They are just educated on how to do the job. Like you said, nurses are just trying to get the job done, and we are not well versed in things like this and holistic health and alternative medicine, because healthcare is not set up to be like that. Like these white people don't want us to know about these type of things, and we just don't learn we don't learn about this. So this is why we want to have this conversation, so that we as future healthcare professionals can learn what you have, which is so beautiful. I'm so glad you were able to come and speak. You've spilled so much knowledge on us tonight, but also so that we can be aware that it is important for us as future healthcare professionals to be involved in things like this. It may not necessarily be in maternal health, but holistically looking at patients and people is just as important as looking at their labs and doing physical exams. It really truly is. So thank you for sharing your philosophy on childbirth and your experience. So we have been on this meeting for almost 2 hours. Doesn't even feel like it. But we want to open it up to an open discussion, any Q&A from anybody who's came and listened to this conversation with us. If anybody has any questions for Stephanie, or just any commentary that they want to say about this amazing discussion that we've had tonight, feel free. I ask that if you do want to make a comment or a question, could you just introduce yourself and then just go ahead and say what you have to say.
Hi, my name is Juliet Offadile. I'm not on camera, but basically hey. So basically I just wanted to make a comment. I really did enjoy this this seminar, but I only joined at like 7 because I was doing homework. But for the time I was here, I really did enjoy it. And I wanted to say that like you literally, just by what you explained to me, literally convinced me to get a doula. I'm not pregnant, but like whenever I do want to start a family, you literally like were spot on with the things I was like concerned about or anxious about for the future, because I was thinking to myself, like, I don't know if I'm going to find that doctor that's going to like really be that invested and actually help me out, like if I need it, because doctors are very busy people and they're not on call. Like they're on call only for when like you physically need it. But like mentally, I was thinking like doulas are almost like, I would call it like birth therapists, if anything, like in my opinion. And I really feel like that would help me out later on in life. So I really do appreciate you for speaking up about this, because I always heard that term, but I never knew what a doula was, like, to be quite honest. And I do want to get into like maternal care later on in the future. And so like whenever I really figured out what a doula was today, I am appalled. Like, I love this for us. I like this energy. So thank you so much.
I agree. Like after you just described all that birth workers do, I was literally saying in my mind, like, I feel like this is necessary. Like, I feel like it's not something that people should think about if they want. I feel like it's absolutely necessary for a mother to have a doula. Like, why would you not want that? Why would that not be something that is that information is not given to patients? And like you said, Juliet, like Juliet wants to be a physician as well. But literally in healthcare, I won't even say as far as like doctors and physicians, we are taught to be emotionally detached. And even though I won't say that has benefits, because I don't believe that, we are just not trained to be as invested as full spectrum birth workers. And that investment is so necessary. So I agree, Juliet. Somebody has their hand up. I'm not sure who it is because it says that it's my name, but that's not me. So
Hey, it's me, Miracle. Hey, everybody. I don't know why my name is coming up like yours, but hey, everybody. I'm Rihanna. I just had a natural birth not even 3 months ago. I had a white midwife and I had an at-home water birth with like a pool and everything. And I just want to say I really appreciate this whole seminar, which I'm gonna just call it a seminar because that's what it feels like. It was very informative, and I just feel like you said, it's literally essential that everybody has like a birth worker involved in their pregnancy, because I feel like my midwife was so supportive, and even though she wasn't Black like I preferred, I still feel like she did everything I needed her to. So yeah, I just want to say I really appreciated this, and yeah.
Thank you. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
yes, it's definitely it is a lot. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Trying to do all of the things that I've added on to what the base level of what a doula is, then being a parent, then trying to have space for self. It's definitely a lot of work, and it's something that I have to actively balance every single day. It's not like um 100% all the time, but I can say that it's definitely gotten better through the support of my partner and finding people in my community that I can definitely rely on as well, to support me through those things as well. So I just want to honor the fact that you had a beautiful birth experience, and it can look so different than what you envisioned in the beginning, like what you can hope for. And then sometimes those things don't unfold, but because you were informed or because you had that care and support that you were needing at the time, you were able to still have aspects of your birth that were beautiful. So I appreciate it.
do we have any more questions or comments that anyone wants to share before we wrap up?
I will say though, if everybody has Instagram, please, please, please go on there and follow Doctor underscore midwife. That was a midwife that I mentioned before, who's trying to run the 12th, or she's building the 12th freestanding birth center in the United States. Um, so it's super exciting, and her lives, she does them every Sunday. They are called Sunday Cervix. It's a play on Sunday service, which I love. And she is very like no, she doesn't hold back. And I love her approach on things because it hits different when you're hearing it from a midwife, and not to mention a black midwife, not to mention someone who worked in the hospital and then decided to make a route for herself. So definitely check her out. Watch any of her previous lives, and it will transform your journey as you move towards your goals for your career or for your work path or life path. Even someone who isn't pursuing this work, just sitting and listening to the experience, or even attending those lives and being a part of that experience, it transforms you every single time. So I'm gonna add it in here, um, and definitely follow her for sure.
Thank you for that. One thing I wanted to share before we wrap up is if you are in the Houston area, and Stephanie, I don't know if you've ever been here, but there is a art display. I call it an art display, but it's called Project Row Houses.
Hmm.
And they have, it's basically like, I think like 7 or 8 little tiny houses. And they have various different types of like abstract art and things like that. And they also like help to uplift the homeless in a way too. I'm sorry, I took a field trip here like pre-COVID for one of my classes, but they have one house that's like dedicated to talking about African American maternal health, and the whole like inside of the house is just is red, and it has like all this different information about the reality and the facts about the things that brown women go through when they are pregnant. So if you're in the Houston area, I will recommend going there on a weekend if you have time just to see it. But other than that, thank you so much, everybody who came out to listen. This is an amazing conversation. I'm so glad that we were able to connect. Stephanie's Instagram at Rose Gold Birth is right here on the screen. And just thank you for this. You spilled a plethora of knowledge on us. You were very well articulated, very beautiful.
Thank
Um,
you.
Congratulations on your baby. I'm wishing you a safe delivery, and just thank you for coming tonight.
Yes, thank you all. I'm so grateful, really over the moon about this experience. I if I had never asked to do this, we wouldn't all be sitting here and having this experience. So I want to thank myself. And I also want to thank all of you, and yeah, I'm just grateful.
Thank you so much. Okay, guys. If you have any questions or comments, you can. I'm gonna be here after I end it because I want to make sure that I get the recording. And but if you have any questions or comments, you can stay and ask or put them in the chat. But I hope you all have a great evening and a successful rest of the week. And stay tuned with BSHA because we have some more great events coming up for this semester. Thanks, guys.